السلام عليك يا رسول الله يا محمد بن عبد الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الواحد التي هدت بفنائك ليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقى الليل والنهار ولا جاء الله وأخلح مني لزيارتكم. السلام الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك أئمة المسلمين علي بن مسلم محمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I saw you on camera. Star.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنا إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكرى وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم وإن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني ذل في ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسل إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم. والشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تعتيهم من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعموا من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء، ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء، فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم، أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم، إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منير ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله عز وجل نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبيه يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
Our resident Zakir, Ma'alim Dungarsi, Sheikh Bilal, my respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. On this auspicious occasion of the birth of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I wish you all Kushali Mubarak. I would like to thank the managing committee for giving me this opportunity to make this presentation to you tonight. I have been requested by one of our member Jamaats currently undergoing some fundraising efforts for their upcoming new center to say a few words on their behalf. This past Arba'een, I was fortunate to visit 3 of Nasimco member Jamaats in Western Canada, making sure I went there before the brutal cold. I went in the heat of the summer. So I had these warm memories for them. My first stop was in the city of Regina, which many of you might know is the capital city of the province of Saskatchewan in Canada. This is the only Shia mosque in the city, about 3 hours drive away from another center of ours located in Saskatoon, also the only Shia mosque in that city. It is beautiful to see how Hussainiyas serving our Shia community have been established in the most remote areas of North America. Imamiyya Association of Regina joined Nasimco this past May 2024 as our 28th member Jamaat. The province of Saskatchewan is rich in oil, gas and agriculture. It is the fastest growing province in Canada with just over 1 million people. The city of Regina has about 250,000 people, and the Imamiyya Center of Regina, a total of about 50 families or about 200 people. The first Shias came in the 1990s to Regina and have been growing quite rapidly, adding 2 to 3 families per year, with the driving force being immigration and the cost of living. As you can see, it is a community of diverse ethnic backgrounds, one which we see similarly in many smaller cities across the US and Canada. The organization was formed 14 years ago in 2010. Their madrasa was established in 2011. They added Ramadan programming in 2014 and their first julus in the city of Regina in 2021. However, for almost a decade, they have been functioning as a mobile community, setting up and dismantling for every majlis, every single night or program. For over a decade, they have been renting community centers and churches and always hard to get consecutive days of booking at a single center during Muharram and Ramadan. For madrasa, they have been renting University of Regina classes, which is a major expense when booking multiple classes. They have major challenges for their ghusl and kafan, and for every program they fly in a scholar every single time. When I visited, there was a visiting alim from India for the 4 nights of Arba'in program. They have no current scholar or alim for the community for consultation and youth guidance. The night I was there this August, I experienced firsthand the struggles of this small community. That night, as we were headed to a rental hall for the regular first night of the Arba'in program, we get a call from the hall saying that there was a double booking with another group, and then they could not have their function there for the next couple of nights. It put the whole community at standstill. The community leaders had to think quickly, and they directed the whole community to gather at a local Jamaat members' newly purchased property instead, where they literally set up in a matter of minutes, bringing in Maulana's chairs, alams, carpeting, more and tasbih, mic system for the ladies and gents, and tabarukat, all from their cars. And it seemed like it was so well orchestrated that they have done this plenty of times before. And even after all this, their timings were perfect. We should take this opportunity today to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to appreciate this beautiful center of ours. We would normally take for granted all the programming that is available to us. Let us not forget the struggles of the founding fathers of the New York community, where we had similar stories, and thank them for laying the seeds in the 70s and 80s, of which we are all enjoying the fruits today. Alhamdulillah, as of 2020, the Regina Jamaat have secured a property in downtown Regina, and during my visit, they had their ground-breaking ceremony. Their estimated time of completion is 9 to 12 months, and they are slated to move in this coming June 2025, in the hopes that their first programming would be in time for the upcoming Muharram. They are currently in phase 3 of their project, where they are currently in construction. As you can tell in this slide, they are in the construction phase, where they have secured $1.2 million to proceed, but have a current shortfall of 575,000 Canadian dollars. This, my brothers and sisters, is an earnest request for a small community to donate whatever you can, as much as needed. This project is projected to cost 1.85 million Canadian, of which their current shortfall, as I said, was $575,000. It is very reachable, considering with the conversion rate, it is close to only 420,000 USD. As we have heard many times before during fundraisers, this is a chance for Sadaqah Jariyah for generations. Please remember, this is a mosque which cannot be demolished. They have Khums Ijaza from Sayyid Sistani as well as Sayyid Khamenei. As you can see in the slide, Sayyid Khamenei allows for 50% of full Khums submitted to be used towards this project, and Sayyid Sistani allows for 25% of full Khums to be submitted to be used towards this project. However, many of these projects are funded by the 80% instead of the 20% of savings allocated towards Khums. Here's a slide with more information. You're welcome to take a snapshot with your phones. You can donate to the Simcoe in the US or in Canada. We're able to issue you a tax-deductible receipt in both countries. We will forward the full amount collected to the Regina Jamaat. For more information, you can contact me or anyone listed on that slide. I will request the management to forward these slides to the community after the program. I thank you all for your attention tonight. And let us take this moment to remember all those suffering here and around the globe, especially those in the Middle East, with the recitation of 5 times Am Yujibu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Dr. Lungusi, Sheikh Bilal, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Tonight's program tonight's Yasin and program was sponsored for the marhumin that are listed on the screen behind me. Let us recite one Surah Fatiha for these marhumin and all marhumin. There's a big program coming up this week on Friday, October 18th at 8 p.m. here at the center, which is going to talk about Medicare benefits. So all the seniors and youth should bring their seniors, and seniors should attend. It's going to be a very informative meeting. Medicare benefits affects many of us. Lastly, I must mention always about fundraising for our center. The program and the slideshow we just saw was definitely heartwarming right now to see that other community growing, and alhamdulillah we have a beautiful center here, so we should please donate to that program as well as our own center. Let us recite one loud salawat and call up Sheikh Bilal. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
والحبيب خدا خاتم الانبياء بابا سے بلند صلوات
رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat is congratulations to the Imam of our time, Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We have some real Sunday night energy here, but it's okay. I don't want to take too much of your time, but my congratulations to you all on the Wiladat of our Imam, Imam Hassan ibn Ali, Imam Askari alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. This Imam, knowing this Imam is within itself a miracle of imamat. That the one whose imamat lasted only 6 years, and who went through a great level of difficulty, that his message has been preserved and we have ma'rifat of his personality, is within itself a reason to celebrate. And we'll mention 3 different attributes from his lifestyle to gain some understanding of who this is. And inshallah with that we'll conclude our program, that may Allah give us the tawfiq to seek the wasila of this Imam. When we begin our discussion, we talk about the Imam who's known as Imam al-Askari. Why is he known as Askari? Askari means garrison. Askar is a garrison. There are a few different opinions about this, including that one of the names of Surra Man Ra'a, the city that he was in, which was known as Samarra today, or Surra Man Ra'a, cooling or pleasing to the one who sees it, one of its other names was Askar. It was a garrison because it was the military town of the Khulafa of the time. So the Banu Abbas had been shifting their capital until they eventually found the place of Surra Man Ra'a to be able to station a garrison there to protect the Khilafat and to ensure that the authority of the Khalifa was preserved. And one explanation is simply to say that because he lived in this town, that he was called Askari. And same thing with our 10th Imam, that lived in this town, therefore he was known as Askari. One of the contemporary ulama of our time, Sheikh Muhammad Sanad, Hafidhullah, has a very lengthy discussion where he says we haven't appreciated and understood who this Imam was. That Askari, and calling him Askari, is an explanation of his madhlumiyat, of his oppression, of his being oppressed. That this is that Imam who spent his entire life in prison. His being called Askari is to explain that he was stationed and he was imprisoned within the garrison his entirety of his life. Which is why when we talk about his Wiladat, there's actually 2 perspectives of his Wiladat. One perspective presents and says that he was born in the city of Medina like his forefathers, and then shortly within the year after his birth, he was moved with his father to the city of Samarra. Others actually come and they note and they say, no, actually we believe that he was actually even born in Samarra, and that he lived the entirety of his life in the city of Samarra under the police observation that was there for him. Police, military. When we describe and say, for example, a prison, right, there are 2 types of prisons that you can describe. One is a prison, period. The other is a military prison, which is within a garrison. And this is the description of the prison or the lifestyle in which the Imam was kept. One of the things post the fall of the illegitimate government in Iraq was that the people who now live in Samarra took the time to start exposing the history of Samarra as it relates to the Ahlul Bayt. And that 5 or 6 different prisons that the Imam would be associated with in his life within the land of Samarra have been exposed, have been discovered, have been discussed. And they describe these places that were prisons for the Imam, both for him to be individually kept in, for people that were spies that were kept with him, and it was described that for the length of the majority of his life that he was imprisoned for, there would be at least 5 or 6 spies with him constantly. Especially at the establishment of his imamate, that during that 6-year period of his imamate, only 6 years, the shortest imamate of any imam, he was constantly surrounded by named 6 different spies that would constantly be in his company to not leave him alone. And then further they found in these prisons animal cells that would also be used as a place to be able to torture and abuse the imam as well. So this laqab of Askari, of one who is kept in the garrison, who is kept in the military, who is kept as a prisoner, was a description of the oppression of the Imam, that he was that one who spent the entirety of his life under oppression, and the entirety of his life in that difficult situation. Which is why it is a miracle that someone who they tried to suppress so much, and they abused so much, that you and I today, we gather here and we know that this was the authority of Allah on this earth. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. One of the other titles to mention of the Imam is Ibn al-Rida. And that's the Imams, Imam Jawad, Imam Hadi, and Imam al-Askari. All 3 of them are very famously known as Ibn al-Rida. And that the entirety of the Muslim Ummah, if they knew nothing else about the Imam, you could simply introduce him as the son of Rida, and the entirety of the community would recognize, respect, and honor this individual. The reason for this is, of all the Imams, the one who became the Naib of the Khalifa, the successor to the Khalifa, the Wali al-Ahad, was Imam Rida. And he wound up in a public sphere. But you have to understand something. Throughout history, there have been many people who were Wali al-Ahad. Some who actually became the Khalifa, and many who didn't. But the significance of mentioning Ibn al-Rida as the title of each of these Imams has less to do with the honorific of the position of being Wali al-Ahad, and more to do with the exposure to the character of Ahlul Bayt that Imam Rida had the ability to perform. Imam Rida's imamate as Wali al-Ahad only extends over 3 years, and the totality of his imamate is about 20 years. But 3 years is all he spends as Wali al-Ahad. But his character has such an impact on society. And we talk about this when we discuss the life of our 8th Imam. We talk about how he almost brought a revolution when he led prayers. We talk about his affairs within the court. We talk about his debates. We talk about his travel and his journeys. But the impact of those travel and journeys is not that we talk about them till today, but that all of the society of the Muslims acknowledged, appreciated, and was impacted by his character to such an extent that his son, his grandson, his great-grandson, that society could recognize and know them as Ibn al-Rida and would immediately honor this individual, because they would say, we expect from him the same thing that we received from his father. This significance is one of the important elements when we take a look at our lives in society today. Your wealth, your status in a community will be less beneficial to your children than your character in a society. That character that we leave behind, that influence that we leave behind of behavior, will be the honor that our children can carry for generations. Look back even in our own lives, right? And there are certain people today who will honor because of how they treated us as children, how they treated our parents and our forefathers, someone who did our family a kindness. That message stays with us, and it becomes the lasting impact in our community, that we remember those people and we honor their children and their families and their legacy because of the good that they did to us. Today, if we want our children to be proud of who they are, we want our children to be honored in society, it won't be on the basis of wealth and profession. It won't be. It'll be following the example of the Ahlul Bayt, that if my Imam, who himself is an excellent example, is known in society and honored in society, and simply all of society can recognize him by the name of his grandfather, it's a lesson for me. What kind of a legacy am I leaving behind for my children? What kind of a behavior and character? Am I boasting my status? Or am I implementing and imprinting a character on the community that will bear well for my children and my generations? From the other side of this coin is that each of us should honor our forefathers that gave us the iman and the ability to sit in this masjid together, is because of those generations that came before us and exerted this effort. And that the same way that Imam al-Askari was honored by the name of his grandfather, he honored the name of his grandfather as well by showing that good character and akhlaq. When we look at our family name, are we a good sign of that family? Do we present the goodness that we've inherited from that family? Do we represent and teach the values that would give us an honorific in society and honor our forefathers and our grandparents? This is something matlub, it's something desired, that each of us has the ability to exercise this right and responsibility. Each of us has the ability to both be a good reflection of our history and a good lesson to be taught into the next generations. And the fact that an Imam is known by his grandfather, and that all of society would know them by their grandfather, is a lesson for us. It's an injunction on us that make sure that more than the wealth you teach them, the profession you teach them, the character you teach them persists. Find unique attributes that my family should be known by. Find unique attributes of goodness that I want my children to be known by, that I want to leave behind, such that my child can say my father's name or my name when they go out into society, and people will be like, yes, that was someone worthy of honor, that was someone worthy of grace and behavior. In this way, when we look at these titles, some of the other titles of the Imam were Hadi, Az-Zaki, Al-Naqi, As-Samit. These other titles as well, inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq, we'll spend some time in discussing, but we'll move on to our second point. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Why was the Imam imprisoned for so many years? You see, we're not the only ones who knew that the Imams will be 12, and that there will be 12 Imams. As a matter of fact, this was something that the Banu Abbas and the usurpers of authority throughout history have paid attention to. If you know there's a deadline coming, you start paying attention to when and where that deadline is. So what would happen is that these Banu Abbas would intentionally persecute the family of Ahlul Bayt, and the children of Sayyidah Fatima, with the interest of removing them, of abusing them, which is why some of the things that we know, the appointment of our 7th Imam, was something that was done secretly. Imam Sadiq left 5 people in his will of who would be his successor. Imam Rada was forced into the situation of being the open successor. His son Imam Jawad was born late, and he was someone who became the Imam at a very young age, and even then they married him to the daughter of the Khalifa to try and create a tie between this relationship. They always knew that this was coming, which is why the 10th Imam was the one that they started persecuting excessively, to the extent where they thought that, okay, maybe we miscounted. And we know that the 12th among them will be named Muhammad, for the mention of the Prophet's name. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Don't worry, I see that Sunday night energy. I won't take much longer. They assassinated the son of the 10th Imam, imagining that this was the 12th Imam, and that before he begins his authority, to kill him. Which is why the 10th Imam was kept in prison in the Askari, it was kept in Samarra. His son was killed as soon as he left the city. Sayyid Muhammad, the older brother of Imam Hassan al-Askari, is killed when he leaves Samarra on his way to Hajj or Umrah. And as soon as he leaves the city, in the city of Balad, traveling down, they poison and assassinate him immediately. And they think we've ended the lineage. This shahadat of Sayyid Muhammad exposes and brings to light that there is a second son of Imam Hadi, who is known as Imam al-Hassan, that even the Shia did not know who this person was until they saw him at the janazah of his brother. Where the Shia write that we went to go pay condolences, we saw a handsome young man that we did not even know existed walked into the room and tore at his collar, crying over his brother Sayyid Muhammad. And this hadith has a lot of proof within it of the status of Imamat, but that exposure was where the Banu Abbas realized that this is the next Imam, and they imprisoned him. And they went and they tortured and abused him, but they did not know the status of Imamat within itself, which is why they tried through means that they understood. And those means were basically, again, imprisonment, putting spies around him, and exposing him to harm without realizing that the Imam is someone who Allah protects from harm. Which is why in the proofs of his Imamat and his authority was a demonstration for the people of the time of what are the attributes of an Imam, that an Imam has to be present and his attributes are consistent. When we talk about an Imam, it's important that we realize what the attributes of the Imam are as well. When Allah describes in the Quran, in Surah Al-Yasin that we began with, and we're all familiar with the ayat, the 12th verse, Allah says, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْسَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ, that everything has been ordained and explained clearly with an Imam, that there is an authority over everything. This authority over everything that Allah has created, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ, everything has an Imam over it. An Imam has to have the attribute of being able to be the leader of all of the people or all of those elements under his authority, absolutely. When we say an Imam is a leader, that means that there can be no one better than him. There can be no one higher than him. In this aspect, now when we understand that an Imam being the leader has to be the highest, there are certain attributes the Imam has to possess that no one can be better than him. One, his knowledge has to be perfect. If there is even one person who is more knowledgeable than the Imam, then that person deserves to be the Imam. The Imam's awareness of current events, contemporary environments, what's going on, what people are doing, how behavior is happening, has to be more complete than anyone else. Which is why we would see that people write and they say that in that time of the Imam's imprisonment, the only way for us to communicate with him was through writing letters. And we would write letters to him. And one of these people, he says, I wrote a letter, I asked the Imam about hilliyat of an object, if it's permissible or not, and then I had intended to ask him about someone who was trying to get close to the community, but we did not recognize him, but I forgot to write the question. When I received the reply from the Imam, he answered my question that the item that I was asking about is halal, and he said, the question that you forgot to ask me, the answer is that this is not one of our followers and one of our lovers of Ahlul Bayt. The person says, subhanAllah, I didn't even ask the question and the Imam answered it. Similarly, the Imam has to be someone who can facilitate and lead all of the people. There can be no better leader or guide for the people. Which is why the attribute of Imam al-Askari would be described and said that when he was in prison, there would be all types of people in this prison. That's one jailer, he comes, he says, I saw this man. At one moment he was speaking Turkish, at the next minute he was speaking Roman, at the next minute he was speaking Persian. In my mind I thought, this is an Arab. How can it be that he speaks all of these languages? When the Imam turned to me and he says, I am the Imam of the people, how could I be their Imam if I couldn't speak to them? How could I be the Imam if I didn't know their affairs? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Amongst the i'jaz and the showing of the Imam's authority is also that the Imam, when he is in authority of Allah, he's in authority not just over men, but even over the animals. When I mentioned that some of these prisons they used to keep wild animals and lions and tigers and other things in, they would try to remove the Imam by the use of these animals as well too. And the idea of using an animal to, for example, get rid of the Imam was a common practice in that time, which is why there are a few stories about this. And one, for example, Mu'tamid has a stallion that they can't break. And the stallion kills whoever tries to take care of it. So eventually, the vizier say, why don't you give it to Imam Hassan al-Askari? And if you're lucky, he'll kill the Imam as well too. So Mu'tamid says, good idea. He calls Imam Hassan al-Askari. Imam Hassan al-Askari brings his stable master. He brings the one who keeps animals for him with him. When Imam Hassan al-Askari goes to visit Mu'tamid, Mu'tamid says, what do you think of this horse? And the Imam replies, he says, it's a beautiful horse. He says to the Imam, why don't you put a bridle on it? The Imam turns to his keeper of animals. He says, go put a bridle. And Mu'tamid says, no, I asked you to, not your servant. So the Imam goes and puts a bridle on the horse. Mu'tamid becomes surprised at this animal that wouldn't let anyone touch it. Imam comes back, he says, it's a nice horse. He says, why don't you put a saddle on it? Imam again appoints to his servant, and Mu'tamid again says, not your servant, you. So the Imam goes and he puts a saddle on it, and the animal accepts it. Eventually Mu'tamid says, why don't you try riding it? And Imam Hassan replies, it's the property of the Khalifa. He says, I give you authority, go and ride it. And Imam mounts the horse and the horse is completely docile. When Imam comes off of the horse, Mu'tamid says, what do you think now? He says, this is a horse worthy of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When Imam makes the statement, it's not on the basis of believing that Mu'tamid is Amir al-Mu'mineen, but rather it's on the basis of taqiyya, of realizing that what the intention of this person was, and how it is that the Imam has to free himself from the situation of preserving his life. Mu'tamid says, then there I go and I give you this horse and it's yours from now. And the stable master is the one who narrates this hadith. He says, after that moment this horse became so docile that they couldn't imagine that anyone had been killed by this, and this was the property of the Imam. This wasn't the only incident. When, for example, in prison, they would eventually, from time to try and to end the life of the Imam, they would put him in with the wild animals. They describe and they say that wild animals, wild lions who are hungry, we put him in. They went and they sat by the feet of the Imam. And they did this more than once, to eventually once where the lion master of the time says, I came and I saw that a lion was sleeping at the feet of Imam Hassan al-Askari. I imagined maybe there was something wrong with the lion. So I opened the door. And he goes in, and the lion immediately eats him. Meaning that the animal was still wild and dangerous to others, but the authority of an Imam is such that he has absolute authority over everything that's going on around him. That this significance that everything subdues itself to the authority of the Imam is what Allah is indicating, that an Imam, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. That Imam who is the clear and apparent authority over a people is the one who has perfection in the attributes, and everything is subservient under his authority, including the knowledge, including the languages, including that which is hidden from others. The Imam knows clearly. That's why even people who would want the generosity of the Imam would be those who, even if they lied, the Imam would know. One from the family of the Banu Abbas says, I waited, because when the Imam would be freed from this prison, he would still have to stay in Askari. He would still have to stay in Samarra. Part of the condition of staying in Samarra and not being in prison was that every day or every 2 days the Imam would have to go from his house and go to Dar al-Imara, the governor's palace, and check in to show that he was still in the city and had not left. In this condition, people would stand along the way to be able to speak to the Imam, because otherwise there was no access to him. One of the Banu Abbas says that I sat on the way waiting for him, and when I saw him going to Dar al-Imara, I stopped him and I said, I swear to you, I don't even have a dinar, give me assistance. You are from a generous family. And the Imam turns to him and he says that, why would you lie? I know that you have 200 dinars of gold buried in your house, but why would you lie? And he says, this doesn't mean I won't help you. And the Imam turns to his servant and says, give him 100 dinars of gold. And the Imam says, but that money which you lied about, Allah will ensure that you cannot benefit from it. And the Imam in this way shows his generosity, as well as shows his knowledge of the unseen, that when someone speaks to him, he knows when someone is telling him the truth and when someone is lying. And this way, certainly the man says, sometime later when I went to go dig up that money, I found that one of my sons knew where it was. He uncovered it and he took that wealth. This description of the authority of the Imam is one of the important attributes of understanding that now when we think of the Imam of our time, one of the most important things that we have from Imam al-Askari is the proof and the knowledge that the Imam of our time, Sahib al-Asri wa zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, was certainly born and is the Imam of our time. An imamat that only lasts 6 years has a particular purpose that has to be served. And one of those, and one of the most important elements of that, is the Wiladat of the 12th Imam. And in spite of all of the difficulties, and one of the conversations that you'll see that happens is that they say that we don't have an authentic narration of the birth of the Imam. Yes, because all of the people that were around the Imam were spies. And the only one who narrated it is his aunt, Sayyidah Hakima. And that the narration of a woman in the process of Rijaliyah is not something that is normally taken a look at with favor. But the reality that the 12th Imam is born and there is an Imam present in this time, one of the reasons that we know this is the absolute authority of Allah that has to be present at all times on this earth. And the description of what that absolute authority is like is we look at the life of Imam al-Askari and we see his behavior and his knowledge, that the same type of knowledge that he possesses, someone after him has to possess that same type of knowledge and be present. And that one of the goals of this imamat was to ensure that the next Imam is born and his message preserves. The conclusion of looking about these amazing stories of the Imam is not to believe and imagine that those Imams had this ability, but that rather every Imam appointed by Allah, and that there are these 12 Imams that are appointed, have the same authority constantly and consistently in every situation over humanity. And for us, if we can recognize the authority of the 11th Imam, we know that the 12th is here and present over us. And that message and that responsibility continues till today, and that Imam fulfills his obligations the same way his father fulfilled the obligation. If there is a separation between us and our Imam, it is not a separation to say that the Imam is absent from us. That the Imam is, for example, na'udzu billah, in a place where he is masjoon like his father was. Even that prison didn't prevent the Imam of the time from helping the people that were in need and serving the community in the case of Islam and making sure the message of Islam was preserved. Therefore, today's ghaibah, one of the important lessons that we learn from the life of our 11th Imam is that even if we can't see the Imam, we can't interact with the Imam, the impact of that ma'soom is still felt and present in life. And that if we honestly beseech that assistance, it is not impossible for the Imam to offer us that assistance. Which opens a bigger question. You guys are okay? We'll take a minute to discuss. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I pray to Allah. Why don't I get what I want? Yes, Allah says, Ad'uni astajib lakum. Call on me and I will answer you. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ فَأُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Allah in the Quran in multiple places. Some places He tells, call me, I'll answer you. Other places He tells you, and He says that when the believer asks about me, when my servants ask about me, tell them I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ. I answer the one who calls to me. إِذَا دَعَانِ, if he calls to me. Allah is listening. Why does it happen then that sometimes my dua is not answered? First and foremost, when we ask for help, there are two elements that happen. When we make dua, there are two elements that happen. One is the dhikr of Allah and the mention of Allah and the ibadat of Allah that takes place that has a reward with Him immediately. That Allah, when He tells you to call upon me, When I fulfill that action, there is a reward for it, that Allah rewards me for this action. The second is I place a request that I'm asking the answer for. It's not that Allah does not possess the ability to answer that request. And the same way with His hujjah and authority. If Allah has made a hujjah and authority on this earth, then that hujjah and the authority has control over what's on this earth, and He has the permission of Allah to execute. The absence of an immediate reply does not mean that the message was not received. Rather, it is that Allah, at the same time as being Qadir and all-powerful, is Hakimun Alim, the wise and the all-knowing. If every dua that we made was answered immediately, the nizam and the order of this earth would immediately collapse. So therefore Allah doesn't answer immediately. Let me explain what that means. I pray, oh Allah, give me $1 million. Mahdi prays, oh Allah, give me $2 million. Ali prays, oh Allah, give me $3 million. If Allah took each of us and fulfilled each of our desires instantaneously, who'd go to work tomorrow? Who would have responsibility in life? Who would count on their ability to do any work? Rather, they would simply say, I asked Allah, He gave me, what do I need to do? Further to that, oh Allah, give me knowledge. If this was sufficient, what's the point of juhad in life? The delay in answer is not the fact that the request was not received many times, but rather that the hikmah of the one who gives is that there is an appropriate time for this result to be presented, and that timing is when Allah will give the result, not when I desire it. In the same aspect, it comes with the request of the Imam. Speaking to the Imam of my time, don't imagine it's a foolhardy endeavor. Don't imagine that it's a useless endeavor. Rather, speaking to the Imam, one, creates that correlation between me and acknowledging the authority of Allah on this earth and believing in His authority and building that relationship of communication and cognizance. If I never speak to someone, do I have a relationship with them? Don't I want a relationship with the Imam of my time? I do. But if the answer isn't immediate, it doesn't mean that the sound wasn't heard, the request wasn't heard, but rather that when the time is appropriate based upon the wisdom of Allah, will the result be presented. The delay in answering a request is not because of the shortcoming of the giver, but it's rather because of the wisdom and the knowledge of what the larger goal and the desire is. The larger goal and the desire of Allah is that each of us struggle in His way, that each of us keep turning back to Allah. If the immediateness of desire is answered, then we would simply say that there's no point in juhud and struggle and service and work. Just ask and you'll get, and that's it. That's the end of it. You have no responsibility. But Allah's wisdom is that He wants to see us struggle in His way. Which is why one of the descriptions of dua is to say that the dua of the one who Allah loves, He delays in answering so that you keep calling to Him with sincerity. And the one whose voice Allah detests, He answers it immediately so that he goes away and forgets to call to Allah again. Build a correlation now with the hujjah of Allah on this earth. Call to Him frequently. Let Him hear your voice. Attach yourself to His association such that He recognizes you. And if my desire is not immediately fulfilled, it's not a shortcoming of Allah's Imam on this earth, but rather it's the hikmah of Allah that there is a time when this request will be best answered. So the teaching of this lesson, some of the great lessons that we take from this Imam, our 11th Imam, the one whose Imamat was only 6 years, but it was 6 years of separation. It was 6 years of appointing representatives who would answer the questions. It was 6 years of assisting people indirectly, is that there is coming a time after him of great difficulty and separation. Recognize the signs of the Imam. Know that the Imam after him possesses these signs, and beseech and connect with him even when you can't interact with him directly. We ask Allah by the right of this day, by the right of the Hadirin and Ghaibin, that, oh Allah, first and foremost, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Ya Allah, by the right of this night and the wasila of Ahlul Bayt and khususan the Imam, our 11th Imam, and his son, our 12th Imam, Ya Allah, fulfill our hajat. Ya Allah, those amongst our families and communities that are suffering through sickness and disease, give shafa'at to the mu'mineen wherever they are. Ya Allah, there are those who are suffering through difficulty, strife and insecurity. Give aman to the mu'mineen, muslimeen wherever they are. Oh Allah, keep our children on the upright path of Islam. Ya Allah, give our children the tawfiq to have ma'rifat and understanding of the Imam and the Imam of our time. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. Entitle us to the ziyarat of Imam Hussein in this world and the shafa of Imam Hussein in the hereafter. Remembering all of our marhumeen, all those who are in need of dua, 1 Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas, and a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.
أفضل الصلاة محمد وآل محمد بعد سبال جا مدینے میں پیام سلام علیک جھک جھک کے پہنچا دے مدینے میں پیام سلام علیک راحت قلب نقی مولا حسن جس کا لقب ہے عسکری مولا حسن اے والد مہدی دی مولا حسن لے کے خلق کے 11 امام مولا حسن یا عسکری السلام علیک یا ہادی السلام احمد یا محمد السلام اماموں کی زیارت نصیب کر خدا ہو محتاجوں کی جلد حاجت روا جو بیمار ہو جلد پاوے شفا وہ علم کرن آج پیدا ہوئے حسن عسکری آج پیدا ہوئے امام مبین آج پیدا ہوئے ہے 5 اور بنو مل جہار دہتان احمد وعلی زہرا و حسن شبیر سے لے طائمہ شبیر سے لے تا امام زمان ایک ایک پہ صدا صلوات کے ہو پہ نثار گوہر جو نبی ہے بلند در صفاته صلوات صلوات و سلام یا امام زمان فرما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله يا محمد بن عبد الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي الشهيد بكربلاء. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباقر. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.